For NFL fans, this is arguably the most exciting week of the entire year. Not the Super Bowl, because frankly, if your team's not playing, why do you give a crap? Even, I think, more so than opening week of the NFL regular season. It's NFL draft week. That's the most exciting week of the year for NFL fans. Beyond question. We all think we know. Everybody's an expert. Everybody feels great. Nobody ever makes a mistake with their draft. We got the guy that we want. He was the top player on our board and all this other bullshit. And one of the great things about the draft, although I'm still not sold that I absolutely love the 3-day format. That could just be old school guy like me that preferred the Saturday and Sunday. Feel like you got your ass kicked 6 ways from Sunday, but we're depressed at the end because you said, God damn it, now I got to wait 364 days until the next time this starts the following year. But now, day one of the NFL draft is in the books, and we're going to do what we should do because this is the fun thing to do. We're going to talk about the winners and losers. Oh, you can't put grades on them. You can't make a determination. Number one, in some cases, yes, you fucking can. Number two, no shit. There's a lot that could happen here in the next few years. Don't be a pussy. Like, be bold, go on record, and make some proclamations. Oh, we'll let it wait to see him play out and see what happens. Ah, screw you. Come on, man. Be bold. Have some damn takes here. Because that's what I'm going to do. Because that's part of the fun. Where you can look back at 3 or 4 years and say, this a-hole was absolutely right about this one. This a-hole looks like an a-hole because what the hell was he even talking about? People conveniently forget things, like it is what it is. So I'm here to talk about night one of the 2022 NFL draft and who some of the biggest winners and losers are. And before I do that, I just want to say, this draft was interesting in the fact that it really wasn't a great draft to have a top 10 pick. It wasn't. Why do I say that? Because defensive players went through 5, first of all. In a league that is more predominantly determined for success based on the offensive side of the ball, the top 5 picks were all defenders. And you can say, well, that's teams trying to stop opposing teams. That's great, but it is a reflection of how the defensive talent was viewed in this draft, while not even generational itself, compared to the offense talent, specifically the quarterback position, but not exclusively the quarterback position. So you look at this draft and you say, if you had a top 10 pick, nobody wanted to trade up where you were. They didn't. And it didn't happen. That's not a great spot to be in, where you basically have to take somebody or convince yourself that somebody is worth taking there, even though in many cases, the guy that you took in that top 10 might not be a guy different than a guy you could have taken at 30. So that's what it is. So let's talk about it, though. Winners and losers. I thought there were some prominent winners. Now, the one thing you got to be careful of in situations like this is that it's always easy to say a team with multiple first-round picks won. It absolutely is. You'll probably see plenty of people talk about the Giants getting Kayvon Thibodeau at 5 and Evan Neal at 7. And look, I like both of the picks. I'm not as sold on Thibodeau's upside maybe as some others are, but Evan Neal certainly makes sense as a day one plug-and-play starter at right tackle, and he's going to be a damn good one. But they still don't have a quarterback, and they're a really bad team. You know what I mean? Just because you have multiple first-round picks, they weren't able to turn picks 5 and 7 into any additional draft pick capital. There's also a piece for a team like the Giants. I'm not going to call them losers because they certainly weren't losers last night. But if Justin Fields ends up being a franchise quarterback in the league, they'll look like fucking idiots for making that trade last year. Because they basically would have gotten Kadarius Toney, Evan Neal, and whatever they used that 4th-round pick on for Justin Fields. If Fields becomes a franchise guy and Danny Dimes continues to suck, they will look like clowns. So it's more like the jury is still out on this one. Some real winners, though. I look at the New York Jets. Sauce Gardner at 4, I felt much better about taking him as a corner in the top 5 than I did Stingley Jr. Getting Garrett Wilson at 10, you needed to give your young quarterback somebody to work with in the passing game. And then getting Jermaine Johnson towards the tail end of round 1 at pick 26, being able to peel back up into that spot. Now, I could say this felt like the Jets of old, where they sit there and you draft a young quarterback, and then in the next draft you're spending 2 out of 3 first-round picks on a damn defensive player. That feels like the Jets of old. But it's kind of hard to knock them here for these picks. They got the better corner and Sauce Gardner at 4. They got the better of the 2 Ohio State wide receivers at 10. And they got one of the better edge rush prospects in this draft at 26. That's really, really damn good work. Like, that solid defense is going to be better in 2022. And the offense has added another weapon that they badly needed. What more can you say about the Philadelphia Eagles? Love them bumping up ahead of the Ravens to get Jordan Davis at 13. To put him inside next to Fletcher Cox and, move him. You'll be able to move Jordan Davis in a variety of different spots on the defensive line. That was a great fit for them. They needed help in the trenches defensively. And then to be able to take that 18th overall pick and another mid-round draft pick and flip that into A.J. Brown? Are you kidding me? I guess it's a team in the past 2 drafts spent first-round picks on wide receiver and Jalen Reagor and Devontae Smith, respectively. But Rager's a bust, and everybody knows it. Smith is solid, but he ain't enough. Now you add another young weapon, another young piece for your young quarterback, Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts doesn't succeed in Philadelphia, it's going to be because of Jalen Hurts and not because he didn't have enough help. It's a phenomenal move by the Eagles. You have to do that. The Baltimore Ravens. Kyle Hamilton at 14. Like, one of these things you just sit there and you say, this is another example of the Ravens just kind of letting a guy fall to them on the board. They didn't get carried away. Now, personally, I didn't think Kyle Hamilton was safety 1 in this draft. I think there's some questions about his fit and like how you deploy him, what's his role. But the Ravens are the type of team that I would expect to be able to get the most out of him. So it's a great situation for him there. And then being able to, take Hollywood Brown and package him off to the Cardinals and use that as part of a package to get pick 23, bump back down, get pick 25, and then take Linderbaum, the center from Iowa. You could say, well, maybe he was a bit of a reach. Linderbaum's going to be a long-term starter at center. They needed help on that offensive line. They got to better protect a guy like Lamar Jackson. You look at this and you say, for where Hamilton went and how Baltimore I would envision using him, and for Linderbaum and the role he's going to play, that was a hell of a day 1 of the draft for the Baltimore Ravens. In terms of some of the losers, got to go to the quarterbacks not named Kenny Pickett. And even Kenny Pickett, he was the first quarterback taken, but he went 20th overall. Could say, yeah, he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He gets to stay in Pittsburgh and all that. That's cool, but he still didn't get as high as you'd want to get drafted because he misses out on a shit ton of money. But for the other young quarterbacks, Malik Willis especially, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, these were guys, especially in the case of Willis and Ridder, you were seeing at least some thought that they might end up going in round 1. And now you're talking about they'll go maybe in round 2. You would think, but who knows? They lost. They didn't profit like they thought they might have. Now, it could work out to their benefit because you could say they will have 4-year contracts instead of 5th-year option they have to contend with. And it might get them to market quicker in terms of franchise tag or big long-term contract if they prove to be the guy. But not a great night for them. They were some of the top quarterbacks in this draft. They didn't even go in round 1. The Minnesota Vikings. This is going to depend on your perspective. It is not that the safety that they chose from Georgia is bad. I mean, he's a headhunter. He's a physical beast. Like, that's a decent draft spot for taking a guy like him, especially since Daxton Hill went 1 pick before. I don't really have a beef with the pick itself. It's the fact that when you look at what they did here and moving back from 12 to 32, you have some people who are trying to put a positive spin on this and saying, hey, man, they moved all the way back and they got an additional 2nd-round pick, blah, 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 blah. And maybe it works out because you still take a Malik Willis or you take a wide receiver or something. But I want to emphasize, Minnesota did not take best player available on the board at 32. They had other more glaring needs. Most importantly of all, I feel like their general manager did not play the draft game well here because he wanted to double down on draft pick capital in this kind of mid-ass draft. instead of using that to at least turn it into a future first-round pick. Like, this context matters. That feels like a really bad move. I look at the New Orleans Saints, too, and giving up future draft pick capital all for this draft. And then even on draft night, having to move up here. And they're not moving up for a quarterback. They're moving up for one of the wide receivers and Chris Olave. Yikes. All that positioning and wrangling, and you walk out of this draft with Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. So you're hoping that you've got Michael Thomas and Olave at the wide receiver position. You're hoping that Penning comes in and could be a replacement for Teron Armstead. Who's going to be your quarterback? Like, the Saints a couple of years ago, they did this shit where they traded up big for Marcus Davenport, and it's a dumb move even if Davenport ends up being a solid player. You don't make those types of moves for those types of guys. And looking at their circumstance and situation, they did not need to move up here. So, just head-scratching to me, my opinion. And for the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers specifically, no offensive help again. Now, you're going to look at the picks and you could say, okay, Walker arguably wasn't even the best linebacker at Georgia last year. That was Nakobe Dean. I would tend to agree. You could say, well, they also took Devontae Wyatt, who's had some off-the-field concerns, and he was only the second best defensive tackle at Georgia last year. Number one was Jordan Davis, with which I kind of agree. And they came into this draft after trading away Devontae Adams with a wide receiving group that is less than spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. And they don't take one of them at either 22 or 28. Now, granted, there was a big run on wide receivers, and you knew this was coming at some point. And 6 of them were taken by 18. And at that point in time, I can't blame the Packers for not trying to force it if a guy didn't feel like a good value at that point. I understand that. Now, maybe you could question why they didn't bother trying to move up to get into the market for one of these wide receivers. That is a fair and valid question. Part of the reason why they're on the losers list. But even more so for me is just the fact that you had 2 first-round picks. And frankly, as much as you want to talk about defense, your offense needs some help too. Why not draft at least one offensive player? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be an offensive lineman or a wide receiver. It could have been an offensive lineman. I'm just saying, like, maybe Tyler Smith would have made sense with your 22nd pick, or Linderbaum. Maybe you move up a little bit to try and get Penning. Now, maybe there was also the run on offensive linemen throughout this draft, and it put the Packers in this awkward spot where the board set up for them, where they ended up having to take defensive guys because it made the most sense. I understand that. But that's partly a creature of their own creation. And, yeah, your defense got better, so the fuck what? You have to be able to score points in this league. And even great defenses can be beat in this league. And I just think you had multiple linebackers available. You've just paid Devondre Campbell big money, and he's coming off of like an all-pro season. You really thought Quay Walker was a better prospect than Nakobe Dean? And you thought Quay Walker was a better prospect than Devin Lloyd, who went 27 to the Jaguars? Yikes. And to totally ignore the offense again just feels really dumb. And I'll say this, like for the Jaguars, I'm not going to put them in the losers column yet, but did they just take Andre Bruce 2.0 at the first overall pick? And then they trade back up to take Devin Lloyd. It's hard to knock them taking a stud like Lloyd at 27. But serious question, we have to be honest about this. Trevor Lawrence fucking sucked last year, right? This is not about assigning blame or responsibility. It's reality. He was not good. And you come into this draft knowing that you spent the first overall pick on a quarterback last year and it didn't go well. And you come out of this draft with 2 front 7 players on defense. That's fucking stupid. That's not how you build around and support and help a young quarterback. So while it's not loser shit, because it's Jacksonville, it probably will be in a couple of years.